Late at night. The city's hospital is quiet except for the wind. A doctor, exhausted from a long operation, stepped into an elevator. He pressed the button on the first floor, looking forward to returning to the lounge, soon get some sleep. The elevator doors closed slowly as soon as the doctor breathed a sigh of relief. The elevator doors opened again. A nurse came in quickly. The doctor frowned slightly, but didn't say anything, just silently pressed the door button. The elevator began to descend slowly, but to the doctor's surprise, when the elevator reached the first floor, it did not stop. He looked at the floor and saw that the elevator was still descending. A pang of uneasiness sprang up in his heart. I turned to look at the nurse, but he was expressionless, as if everything was normal. As the elevator descends, the atmosphere becomes more oppressive. When the elevator reached the third floor, it suddenly stopped. The elevator doors opened slowly. A little girl appeared at the door. She was wearing a white dress. Tied to his right hand was a bright red ribbon. It doesn't fit in with the grim atmosphere around it. The doctor, who saw this scene, was enveloped by a vague fear. He knew 3 floors down was the hospital morgue. The hospital has a weird rule: every body in the morgue is identified by a red rope tied to the right hand. And this little girl right here, the red ribbon on the right hand matches the red rope in the morgue. While the doctor was nervous, the little girl got ready to get into the elevator. The doctor, who saw this, regained his senses, closed the elevator door quickly, pressed the button on the first floor. The nurse watched him and asked the doctor why he didn't let the little girl in. The doctor turned pale and said 3 floors below is the hospital morgue. Each body had a red rope tied to its right hand. The little girl has a red ribbon on her right hand. The nurse listened to the doctor with a weird smile on his face. She slowly held out her right hand, saying darkly, "Are you talking about a red band like this?" The doctor looked closely. The nurse also had a red ribbon tied to her right hand. It looks exactly like a little girl's. He backed away in horror, only to find the elevator doors closed. He got stuck in the elevator. The atmosphere in the elevator is getting more and more oppressive. The doctor began to have difficulty breathing. He turned to look at the nurse, only to find that her eyes had changed. The white of her eyes and the inky black of her eyes. The smile also became more and more eccentric, and the whole mouth felt like it was going down the ears. The nurse was staring at the doctor with a dark and profound expression. It was as if there were endless secrets and fears hidden. Suddenly, the lights inside the elevator flickered. With the doctor's heart racing, he realized he was caught up in a terrifying supernatural phenomenon. Then the nurse suddenly spoke, and her voice became hoarse and cold. "Do you know why every body in the morgue is tied to a red rope?" She reached out, grabbed the doctor by the collar, and drew him close. The nurse's voice echoed through the elevator, filled with horror and despair. The doctor struggled in horror, but the nurse's strength seemed irresistible, and he felt his consciousness gradually dark and his body was swallowed by a force. The elevator suddenly vibrated violently, as if it were going to break open. The doctor's eyes lit up. He found himself standing in a grim place, surrounded by a thick fog. He turned and saw that the nurse had disappeared. Instead, a ghastly crowd, all with red ribbons tied to their right hands, approached the doctor. The doctor backed away in horror, but the escape route had been blocked, and he closed his eyes in despair, waiting for the coming fate of protection. At this moment, the elevator door suddenly opened, and a strong ray of light came in. The doctor opened his eyes and found himself back in the hospital elevator. The floor outside the elevator says first floor. The nurse was nowhere to be seen, and the doctor gasped with confusion and fear. He didn't know if what he just experienced was hallucination or real. He knew he would never ride an elevator alone again. From that day on, the elevator in the hospital became a topic of conversation that changed color when staff talked about it. The legend of the red ribbon also spread in the hospital, has become a terrible memory in everyone's heart.